We're happy you've joined us for the study and discussions on the Emerald Tablets by Billy Carson and other authors. Parisha, an ancient text interpreter and tablet reader, will be hosting this weekly event. She will be joined by associate speakers from the LCFHD each session, and lines will be open for discussions. So join us on Mondays at 5:30 Pacific Mountain Time.
On page 48 at the bottom. Okay, I want to read that with you, then I'm going to share with you something that we did and some points that were made. Edgar Casey has a lot to say about the halls of Amenti, as well as the pyramid, the Great Pyramid, and different things in that. And many years ago, I was very active with ARE, his particular organization, and I worked very strong with Hugh Lynn and up until he passed. But here on 48, it starts with, upward grew into the light of knowledge the children of Chem. Watered by the rains of my wisdom, blasted I then a path to Amenti, so that I might retain my powers. Living from age to age, a son of Atlantis, keeping the wisdom, preserving the records, great grew the sons of Chem, conquering the people around them, growing slowly upwards in soul force. Okay. Now for a time I go from among them into the dark halls of Amenti, deep in the halls of the earth, before the lords of the powers, face to face once again with the dweller. Raised I high over the entrance, a doorway, a gateway leading down to Amenti. Few there would be with courage to dare it. Few past the portal to dark Amenti. Raised over the passage, I, a mighty pyramid, using the power that overcomes earth force. Deep and yet deeper place I a force house or chamber. From it carved I a circular passage, reaching almost to the great summit. There in the apex set I the crystal, sending the ray into the time-space, drawing the force from out of the ether, concentrating upon the gateway to Amenti. Other chambers I built and left vacant to all seeing, yet hidden within them are the keys to Amenti. I have worked for many years with a very psychic shaman that I met on one of my trips to Russia, especially when Russia had actually, the Communist Party was melting down and some things happened. So we're talking quite a few years ago. And she had definitely amazed me with some of the stuff. I'd never met her in my whole life. And a bunch of people that had gone with me, we actually were asked to have audience with her. And she had, for many years, actually stopped going and being in public. She was actually in her apartments with all her windows and everything covered, and kind of become real reclusive. People were very concerned about her because she had already demonstrated very powerful perception. So when we went there, she had asked those who were hosting us to actually bring me to her place. They were very eager for me to do that because this was the first time she had opened an invitation to any of them or anyone. So when we went there, she had in this huge apartment, which was a flat, like a whole floor of a one of the great buildings there. She had painted, like there were just rooms and rooms of paintings with the size of doorways, in fact. And in the paintings that she had, she would actually, I mean, all of the particular entities that she painted had my face. I mean, unquestionably my face. And she had never seen me. And she had painted one of the Black Madonna that was just magnificent with red roses in her arms. And I mean, when I looked at that, I thought I was looking at myself in a mirror. The face, the features of my face, the colors of my eyes and everything she had captured with great deal of detail. So I've been working with her ever since. When I left, she asked me to bring certain of her paintings with me. And I've never ever really displayed them or framed them. I had to roll them up, and I had assistance actually getting them out of Russia through immigration. And I've never really ever like I said, framed them or put them up, but I've kept them very much in my medicine space, and I do a lot of work with her. So she keyed in to the fact of what we're doing. She does not use computers. She has no iPhones or anything. She had her daughter call me and actually respond to the fact she knows that we're doing some really large broadcast over, she has a different name for the halls of Amenti, okay, and that the Great Pyramid was involved. Now she does what I call a lot, what I've watched her do is pretty much what I've watched remote viewers do. I taught remote viewing for a great many years, and when I watched how she works, I saw she uses a lot of the techniques that come with remote viewing. Okay, so I said, great, what do you want to do? And she said, I would like you to read a passage in your mind. Just sit with me. We set a time between her time and mine. We set a time between the two time zones that would be exact. And then I sat with it and I read the particular part to myself, not to her. I simply read what I just read with you. And I read it silently to myself, okay? And then I went into meditation and connected with her, okay? And she was aware of everything I had read, and she immediately went to the Great Pyramid, okay? And she described being there. She was talking to me through everything she was seeing. Her daughter was holding a cell phone near her so I could hear her, and she was telling me what she was seeing. And then she told me that when she goes into the earth under the Great Pyramid, and she said, your footprints are there. You have been there many times. And I told her, well, very recently I'd gone there with a group of healers and people, and we had done some spiritual work there. And she goes, I see them. And she started actually describing some of the people that were on this last trip with me there. And then I told her, and are you speaking of something different? She says, oh, yes, this is many, many, many lifetimes that your footprints have been there. And I told her at that time, I have not really experienced any physical incarnations. And she said, right, but your footprint is very large through the universe. That's all she would say to me. And then she actually described how she went into the pyramid. She's never been to the pyramids. She explained exactly what everybody here had gone through, as well as myself, how she crawled in and how she went up and how very steep the gradient was. And then she arrived in the room at the top of the gradient, and she said, this has changed now. And then she began to actually explain to me, she says, let me go further. And then she began to explain to me the same vision I had when I was asked by a very, very powerful, wise person I work with, who had explained to me what had gone on in the Great Pyramid with Enki during the war, the Great War, the war that they had, to where he had to concede the pyramids. Mm. And then she described all of these beautiful stones in the sides of the walls. Then she took me to another chamber that had sections off of it, which people here in the room with me had shared, and told me what was in those rooms that have been removed over time. Then she actually, and I said nothing, remember I shared nothing with her. Then she shared with me that the beloveds, and that's what she calls them because that's what I call them. And I call a lot of people I work with the beloveds, especially those that work very close with me with Nuwati. And she said the beloveds went to the actual place of resting and the point of entry here for that one who you speak of. She said Thoth in a different way. It didn't sound like Thoth. And at first I listened closely, and then she repeated it, and I knew she was talking about Thoth because we went to Thoth's particular place of rest at that time. Then she said, only now can I see the passage. And then she started describing to me that there is another chamber, another walkway down from the big room that we entered, and that if you continue with that, it has been blocked now. But if we go past the blockage, we have entered into the corridors of what they are speaking of as the Amenti. And then she started explaining to me what she saw as she journeyed there. She went so far, and then she stopped, and she said to me, we're asked to not do this any further, but to go back. And then I experienced her talking in a language that was familiar to me, but I don't ever remember speaking it. And then when she started to walk away, I asked her who she was speaking to, and she said they spoke to me in their language. And it was a melodic language, a beautiful melodic language, more sound and notes than words, but definitely sounded like it could be words. Anyway, she came back up, and when she come back up, she said to me, is this the way you read it? And without looking at a book, without having anything in front of her, she worded verbatim what I just read to you. Not a book in front of her, never has she opened this book. But that's how accurate what she was experiencing was. And she told me that all the ones whose ears you have, which means all of you, has connection to this and needs to really apply it just like I'm doing. Read the passage, go into the space of mind and spirit, and experience what you just read. And then, as she usually does, she ends very quickly. And her daughter said she is complete now, and they hung up. So I wanted to share that because I've thought about that. I've thought about that when I'm working with you, that I need you to actually deal with what Thoth has wrote here, what they're calling the Emerald Tablets. Now, I don't agree with everything they said. Please understand this, okay? But it's at least a scratch on the surface to get you going and to get you in there. But if you read what I just read and closed your eyes and just was willing to go on that journey, to actually follow it into that journey, I would even suggest that you record this, read it at a pace, a very slow pace, and record it. Then go into meditation, play back to yourself what you just read. See where it takes you. Because that is ideally what I would like to see happening, that you begin to experience why you would even get on this call with us. Why are you here? Why did you react to coming into this? She was very definite that every one of you have ties to the Hall of Amenti. Well, if you're just guessing at it, why not try to experience it? So I'm saying at this point, when you start reading all of this, I know the beloveds that I work with all the time, I know you all have this. This is Milwaukee, okay? You want to come back and go through passages that you wanted to know more about. You know, you don't have to read all of them, but ones that you read, and it's like, I think I'd like to have a little bit more clarity on that. Do what she said. Do it. Because like I said, I have thought about this, and I thought it might be a lot to ask of those who are new to the way I teach and the way I work. But I still would suggest that if you're on this call, there is a connection here for us that maybe we have not had the opportunity to acknowledge before now. So give it a try. Okay, and then we're moving on to chapter 4, which is called the Halls of Amenti. Okay, then we'll move over to Marianne Love. Marianne Love is on.
Yeah, I really enjoyed reading this chapter because what I felt it was really speaking to me about is that there is a consciousness. There's always been the children of light, the consciousness that have been always overlooking human, and that there's a point where they felt that they needed to come and manifest here in order to assist humans becoming more conscious and to be free of the bondage and of the restrictions that were on the planet here and in the human experience. And so they're really introducing us to this concept through that we can evolve and we can become aware and we can be free and we can connect. And it, from how I've understood it, is in the beginning they manifested just more out of earth and dust. They were like human, but they weren't human, but they look like human, until Toth, on the other hand, took up human form. And he spoke here about the fact that I don't know if this is what he's talking about, is the fact that there were 3 incarnations of Toth, and the last one being Hermes, who was known as a Greek god. And Hermes was written into the tablets at around 1500 to 1300 BC. And known similar to Toth, like known for language and writing, known for assisting people through the passage to the afterlife or between the worlds, known as a trickster and of wealth and fertility and trade, sort of very, very similar to Toth in lots of ways. And they speak about how he also crossed lots of boundaries around sexuality and, you know, really lifting human consciousness on lots of levels. So, you know, this is talking about us as a consciousness, not just as a body, and really inviting us to understand that more and more, and going on to talk about the 2045 initiative, which I thought was really fascinating, which is all about us as consciousness, and that this is the body altar can be, we can put our consciousness in artificial intelligence so that we can live on and we can live whole, healthy lives if we can repair parts of the body. And we can separate our consciousness from the body. So it's a real invitation to understand ourselves more deeply, not just as a body, but as a consciousness, and that is free. The consciousness is free.
All right, thank you. That's real powerful. I appreciate that a lot. Okay, we have a few more people that have things that they want to share. So Dina, are you somewhere there? There you are. I see you over there.
Okay, good. I had something I wanted to share from page 66, so it's a little later in the chapter, and it was something that spoke to me, and I'm not really sure why, because it wasn't necessarily a new piece of information for probably most of the people on the call, but I got a little excited about what he was saying and sharing. And Billy says our particles instantaneously communicate with one another regardless of distance, and that somehow each particle always seems to know what the other is doing. And, you know, I'm feeling like what he's saying is that there is only one whole, and as he says, we are it's thin and we're separate from this whole. That's what we believe, but we're not. And that separation is an illusion. And to me, this is just so profound. And I feel like if more and more people, more of us would just get a hold or a handle on this, we could change our reality and our world. And I realize this is, like I said, technically old news. But again, it seemed like a light bulb went off in my head. And it said, if we're all part of one whole, then every single thought and word and step we take truly does affect everyone and everything. And it tells me why it's important to accept that there will always be some form of energy maybe that may go against what I believe or what I, you know, think is right or good, because it's all just part of the fractal holographic matrix.
Yes.
And part of the whole, and still that's a part of myself. And if I understood what he was saying correctly, we can't make those parts of ourselves essentially wrong or bad, because still on some level, again, that's still me. And so I thought, if we give energy to our fears and what we are against, essentially making more of it or creating it into our reality. So Billy says, he asks, can the existence of our consciousness be the gift from our Atlantean space travelers? And I wondered if our consciousness is not only a gift, but a type of their curiosity or test to see what will do or what will be done with this consciousness. So that's what I wanted to share.
Hey, very, very good. I like that. And
Okay.
so, I mean, you're not new to the studies that there's a oneness, you know what I mean? But to hear it validated again in this particular context and with what we're reading, you can't get away from it. Yet, how hard is that for everyone to accept? You know,
Right.
how do you really accept that? And you've been taught, you know, this is where the kindness has to come to yourselves. You're judging yourselves by other people's standards of right and wrong. And when you know you live in the natural field of positive, negative, there is no such thing. There's no such thing bad, good, wrong, right. There isn't. Everything is normal and it's part of the balance, the harmony. So what might not fit here or what might not been in the right place, or maybe even the action you took wasn't the exact time for that, or whatever that role would be. And I'm talking about some severe cases where I've talked to serial killers and interviewed and worked and did stories and lines of study on every walk of life. Yet if we are willing to actually look at ourselves, as I do when I talk to these people, even a serial killer who said, please don't let me out because I'll do it again. I have no control over it. There are things about all of us that we can say that. We do things and we'll look back at it and we'll say, I decided I wasn't going to do that and I don't know how I did that again. Okay. It might be in temperament or other ways we do that, but we make ourselves bad for it. And when we realize it's all feeding back into the great spiral of life, and it's the experience of a oneness, you can't punish yourself for this. You can't make it wrong in as much as it's experiencing and evolving into whatever it is that it needs to do. If we can just begin to see that, and then we don't contradict things, we don't judge things. I mean, it's not that I'm saying we have to agree that everything is okay. I mean, it doesn't have to be okay by you. You just have to realize it has its place. It has its own place in the whole picture of things. And if we can begin to do that, remember right now, we're so ignorant and so our neural net's so frozen to the fact that we are crazy enough to believe that war is an answer for peace. I mean, how much crazier can we get, right? How much more extreme can we go? So when we start looking at then how is it that we are so fixed on that? Look at all the little things we do all day. You know, how do you feel when you look at somebody that's homeless, nasty, stinking, and hadn't taken care of themselves for a while? Do you look at that with compassion? Or do you just see something that repulses you? And then that's right there where you can make the difference. Because if you look at that person, not the outer dressing of that person, there's a human being underneath all that. And for that moment, can you feel a moment of compassion? And knowing that while you may never understand how a person could come to that or live like that, just for that moment, they touched your heart. See, we're evolving to that. And then we will realize that everything has a place, and so does everyone. And we're going to see the quickening of that as the reset of the next world is happening right now with us. So then I have Maya, I think, that had something to share. Maya, are you there? Can I see you?
Hello. So what I found really interesting in this chapter was the geometry and how it links back with what Nassim Haramein says, and how we see patterns in geometry creating the hologram we see and live as the fractal proportions, which we can also see within our human body, like how our arm is the same, our forearm is the same size of our foot, and like our neck's diameter is the same as our waste. And then just seeing how like the phi ratio is all throughout the life we live today. And then how he comes to say in the emergence theory, it is described that information is defined as symbols that convey meaning, with symbols holding patterns such as sound frequency, allowing us to distinguish language. And then he further goes to say about the quartzile crystal. And I was really interested in this, so I went and did a tiny bit more research. And from what my understanding of it is that it is a structure that is ordered, but not periodic. So it's not exactly the same each time and can fill all available space, just like that of the flower of life, which when you add one seed, which is a circle, it becomes even bigger, expanding outward, just like both creation and the universe. And that's what I found really important, well, really interesting in how our day-to-day lives are, and how geometry and this hologram is fundamental in everywhere we are.
It's real cool. Thank you very much. Very good, clear perspective. And I think we have Cade that wants to share something. Cade? Yeah, I see you there. Hey, hey.
Hi everyone, my name is Cade Olsen and I'm 15 years old from Sydney, Australia. And one of the main things that that I felt kind of personal with was a part on page, I think it was 56 or 59, my bad. And it was about the Avatar project by DARPA.
Yeah.
So DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Project and Agency, and it is a United States Department of Defense United States Department of Defense, and they're working on a program, an Avatar program. And according to Sebastian Anthony of Extreme Tech News, the Avatar goal is to work on, and I quote, to enable a soldier to efficiently partner with a semi-automatic bipedal machine and allow it to act as a soldier surrogate. And this means that a soldier could be replaced by a two-legged robot, such thing, and he could be controlling it from thousands of miles away in a safe place, such as an office, when the robot could be flying in a whole different country. And as seen to this day, there's many easy accessible games, such as Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, and online different games that are almost the exact replica of what could happen with these programs, and people playing them so carelessly. And we can see that this could desensitize them from the killing of others just because it is on a virtual screen. And now, although they may see it as not real, it gets into their head and they see all the realisticness of it. Therefore, it gets wired into their brain as not so much of a big impact because they can do it on an everyday basis. And I've got some friends closely to me who sometimes won't come outside or whatever, or play or whatnot because they're stuck inside playing these gun games and violent games, which they find enjoyable, which brings up the thought of a game. They somehow find a game and the fun in the war and the havoc, and it kind of brings up different worry lines, but then it's okay as well because it can be used for different things. But I visited extremetech.com, the guy who first brought it up, to get some further information, and I found out that that the robots can be controlled from a simple thing such as a joystick and a multi-monitor display, which could just be two monitors and a little joystick, almost like you're playing Pac-Man, but this would be controlling a real live war machine robot, which could kill people in real life, but he just sees it as a virtual game almost. And some people could even take it a bit further if they want to be one with the robot and wear a virtual reality visor and suit, so they're there and living it and whatnot. And it's almost scary because they've made it into a game at the point where it comes into virtual screens. And there has been $7 million invested into the program recently, showing that the program is still progressing. But like most things with this technology, it isn't the technology that's bad or whatnot. It's about how we use it. And I believe the technology could be used for good things, such as what if you turned one of these remote control robots into a firefighter, and you could send him into a flame building on fire, and he would be able to walk straight through flames and save people and walk out without having a scratch or being burnt, and the person controlling it is safe at home. And some people may think this could be bad for taking people's jobs and everything, but it could also be really useful in situations where humans can't go. And so this technology did come much faster than expected, which is making it quite unknown. And we may need to think about it a bit more before we actually put into action, because it's quite a serious step in our evolution. But I just want, before this happens, for everyone as a collective to think if this is what they want the next step in technology to be. And that's really all I have.
Oh, wow. This is powerful. Thank you so much, Kate. And what makes it very dangerous is the emotional stuff that's involved in it. When anybody, be whatever age, is playing the gaming, there's a lot of emotion around it. Like I've walked through the arcades just to see what kind of energy field it is. And you really have people emotionally unseen when they're doing these things, okay? They're linked there. And that is the real danger. It does become real to them. And you're right. I like your suggestion of why can't we put it into play to actually make the heroes and the greater needs we have of the world. I agree. I wish. So why don't you learn computer science and create some of those games for us, okay? That would be great. Okay. And Brooke Heilman over there in Cleveland. Do you have something you want to share, Brooke?
Yep. So what I wanted to share is also on page 59. So I'm Brooke Heilman. I live in the state of Ohio in the US, and I'm 19. So I wanted to share on page 59 I wanted to share my thoughts on the DARPA program as well. I think it's amazing that what's supposed to be a science fiction movie that is set far in the future, to be precise, the year 2154, and that some of the ideas are able to be done now. So we do have many companies that are working on perfecting robots, but this is still more advanced and very cool, the program. So, and then in this case, it is to have soldiers to partner with semi-auto bipedal machines acting as the soldier's surrogate. Though in the movie, the soldiers were transferring their consciousness into a genetically engineered body to pilot and not a machine. Either way, I still find it amazing. So then take into consideration all of the possible uses of this technology if or when it is released into the public. Some jobs, this tech could be used to help people who have some risky or dangerous jobs so they can stay more safe. So some jobs could be military, as in the main objective of this program, but could also be used for construction and maintenance, mining, machine operators, police work, electrical line installation and repairs, logging, and fishing, to name a few. Those are some of the most dangerous jobs according to some of the information that I found. So those are just some of my thoughts on the amazing DARPA Avatar program.
That's really good. Thank you. Again, I like it that you young people are interested in coming forward on it. Okay, there's actually a few other people. Mike, do you have something that you wanted to add?
Cool. Actually, Maya kind of stole my thunder a little bit, because I also was very interested as I came through and saw emergence theory. And as I started to read that, and I realized I just read emergence theory and I haven't got a clue what the heck that is. So I better not pass by that word without going and doing a little more research. So I did a little bit like Maya, although I have to recommend, I found a video on YouTube, or I didn't find it really, I kind of linked to it. The video is awesome. It's only about a half an hour long, and I'm going to give you the name. It's called Emergence Theory A Layperson's Guide, and it's on YouTube, and it's put together by a group out of Los Angeles who are actually promoting this emergence theory. And what this emergence theory is it links general relativity, which is Einstein's theory, with quantum mechanics. And that has been always the big problem, is linking these two theories together. Well, this emergence theory is trying to do that. So I did a little bit of research into what is behind this, and basically it's really cool because it's built on some very neat things. The first thing it's built on, as Maya pointed out, was information. And what they are basically proposing is that reality is information, or information is reality. They're interchangeable. And that in fact, what is information? Information is giving meaning to symbols. Mm-hmm. Strangely enough, we're also at this point in time talking a little bit about numerology in another one of these programs, and studying numerology and symbolism, and that all came together for me as I was reading this. And that, yeah, I mean, it was just so cool. And then, you know, when you think about it, you've got, okay, so information is symbols, symbols is meaning, meaning requires a choice, because in order to give something meaning, you have to have chosen to give it that meaning. So therefore, that requires consciousness. And that was, for me, like the first bang. That's pretty cool. And then he goes into probably the best animation I've ever seen, or she does, because it's a young lady who does the animation, of this whole thing about all time exists all the time, and how that just becomes, you know, all time exists all the time. You have a hard time wrapping your head around that kind of thing. They do a little animation that is just so well done, so simple and so easy. I would recommend you go look at it, because at the end, it's like all time exists all the time. And it's just really cool. Mm-hmm. They talk about consciousness and how consciousness is necessary, but it's the one part of physics that physicists don't really understand. They know consciousness is now more and more starting to play a bigger and bigger role, you know, especially after Einstein and the whole double slit theory, where the observer really matters. That whole concept moving into physics has physicists a little bewildered, because they don't really know what consciousness is. And they go into that a little bit. They talk about pixelation, and this for me was probably the most powerful part of it, because I've been doing a lot of meditations about going into the blackness and just expanding. And there's an image in this movie where they show this whole reality as a almost like a grid, I guess is the best, as a three-dimensional space-time grid. And it's just so well done and so well explained how the universe is actually built up of these little tiny pieces in little tiny amounts of time, and you build it all together, and that's reality. And how it all exists all the time, and how the past affects the future, and this one little half-hour movie does this really well. And so if you really want to know a little bit emergent theory, I'm sorry to divert things out that way, Grandmother, but I just thought it was really cool and worthwhile talking about.
Okay, tell them again how to get there.
It's on YouTube, and it's called Emergence Theory, A Layperson's Guide. And it's put together by a group called the Quantum Gravity Research Organizations. Quantum Gravity Research, they're out of LA. When I looked them up the first time, one of the things, you know, you always get this one link that's about hoaxes. So I followed it to see if these guys were really for real. And the only hoax was that they're talking about some kooky ideas. Well, yeah, I think they are.
Kooky like us, right? Kooky.
Right. So I thought, I mean, that just made me feel better. So.
In good company we are, right? Okay, very good. And then we have Gabby, you had your hand up. Did you want to share something?
Yeah.
Just adding to Mike, that video is, I watched it twice and I think I have to watch it about 5 more times, you know, to get everything. But to add on to it, they were talking also about the causality loop that Mike mentioned. It's like she was holding her hands up and saying, if this is the past and here's the future, and you write above it past and future, and there's an exchange, of course, we all know that. But she said, if we take away the word past and away the word future, what do we have? It's all one, and it's affecting each other. Like, you know, she visually showed that past and future are interchangeable and affect each other. It was to theory, but I also looked into the initiative 2045 that they spoke about a little bit earlier on page 47, which is a team of Russian and worldwide researchers led by a researcher called Iskov. And I'm actually quite excited about all the prospects that they're putting out there in quite a timeline into the future. Like having spray-on communication where thought processes enable us to communicate, where controlled avatars, our avatars can enable us to be on meetings like this without being there. So we use our avatars, which means there's no business travel required anymore. You know, for business meetings, we can just physically send our avatars to the meetings and control them. So that's really exciting. Their future hope is also to integrate the 5 senses into avatars. Like it's one of their ultimate goals, that the avatars relay what our 5 senses do now to us, you know, wherever we're sitting with our control. Now, what I was sitting with though is a lot of questions about that, because an avatar would mean when your physical body is diseased or is not able or is not going on anymore for whatever reason, and it kind of defies death because you can have your brain scanned and including your long-term memory, it's safe to computer through what they call brain emulation, and you can live on in the avatar. So my question though would be, yes, it may be like ending disease, like when you get diseased, you just live on in the avatar as a healthy being. But also, yeah, it could end physical suffering. But my question would be, we're primitive in some ways, and that came through the research as well when I went on YouTube, and many are posing these questions, like we are primitive in many ways, like we still use destruction and fighting, and you know, there's still hate out there. Are we ready to have our avatars, you know, out there in the world, and are we ready for this technology, and what work needs to be done to lift our consciousness and our way of being so avatars can be used safely? Because, you know, as they talked about DARPA, I mean, there's huge dangers there that avatars can be used for destruction as well. And it's what's his name? Itzkov, the Russian founder of that research project, is well aware of that. He also says an avatar should be an option for everybody. It should not be something that's done for everyone, because some people may choose to death of the body and the finality of that. So he's well aware of that. So my question really is 2 things that sat with me that I'm working on with journaling and things is, are we spiritually evolved enough to go the fully the avatar way? And also, can we trust AI? And I personally do, and it's around us, it's within me. But will it stick to some programming we put on that we don't have control over then? Or do we have control over everything? So I think a lot of it needs to be seen, but I'm really excited. But at the same time, there's a lot of questions that come up for me, and I want us to be ready. So this works for the lifting of the consciousness and enlightenment of the peoples.
All right, thank you very much. Very good to hear. And Steve Jones, you have something you want to add?
Yes. On page 60, they speak about some research that was done with the pyramids, and they found that the pyramid is able to generate energy into the spaces, into the rooms, in the pyramid of how it's designed. And that reminds me of how in other teachings about the pyramids, I have read that there were certain, that Enki chose people to be his gateway, and that they were still in the pyramid. And I thought, get my mind around it in it, but I realized that they talk about him not being there, but using the energy to create. So he wasn't there himself. They said there's nobody there, but he's actually creating with the energy, and that being a gateway, there's actually beings that were those energy fields that created that. And so that reminded me of that, just to see how, I mean, it reflects on a lot of things, just how powerful our thoughts are. And he's not even physically there, but he's creating beings just through his mind, without even, without physically being there. So just the power of what is in the space that we don't consider, we just consider it to be empty, but there's a lot going on in those spaces.
All right, thank you very much. It's when we read this and all of your comments, I mean, I love all of the feedback you guys are doing. It really makes it worth the time to take to get together like this and talk. I love this kind of stuff. It's whatever we can do that encourages every one of us to make that next step. I mean, when you hear all of this stuff that we're talking about here, and all the great things that's been shared, and the many, many other things you've already read, okay? It's time that you say, what are you doing with it? Because really, all in all, the importance to me being here and sharing what Dr. Everybody has to tell me what his name, I want to call him Real, okay? So for this point, whatever of it I would change, it still has pertinent information. And a lot of it supports the very gift of evolution we're in, the time of evolution we're in, to where a lot of this is understood. Could you imagine trying to tell somebody this 200 years ago? Okay, no way, right? But we're in that time period of where things are happening so fast. And our world, like we sit in our living rooms and you can watch news from any part of the world. We have become so minimized in space. There is no distance that we have to be held to, or time, okay? And so when you're actually looking at what it is you want out of life, okay, the fact is you're created as children of happiness. You are given all of the wondering, beautiful things that are unfolding. How is that happening in your day? How is that really how life is unfolding for you? And understand that here, what's being demonstrated and what Toth is sharing, okay, that even he as a human being had to take 36,000 years to evolve to the point to where he could take on the intensity and the field that is called the halls of Amenti. And in that, what are we putting out into, the all that is, and what is it that you're taking back from it? So that if you ask yourself each day, and I love this because there's been many people who in my life who have said this to me, if I measured everything, every challenge, if I measured everything that I need to be aware of before I responded, and I asked myself, how would love respond? How would love react to this? How would love solve this? And actually know that the who I am, not comparing myself or having a role model of anybody else. If love is you, how are you measuring yourself to it every breath you take and in every decision that you make? And are your moments all happy moments? What are you including in them? How much of you is really going on? When you react to this, and I watch how your auras are changing, you're all excited about your reinforcing of this. But then when the camera stops, where will you go? Who then will you become? How then? how much real would this be for you? That even as old as this teaching is, and these emerald tablets, they were made sure to survive by putting them inside a material that weather and time and impact or anything else would not destroy it. And when I read the tablets that are left all over this planet, my exposure to them, and pretty soon I'll be in Scotland looking into one that has actually been brought to my attention, lots of photographs and people working with me with it. Everywhere you go on this planet, there have been messages and reminders to keep us all moving in the right direction. Because all that we are is a circle, and we just keep going through that cycle, evolving even bigger as we move. So make sure that along the way, there is sacred space, that you're feeling the good of it, that you're feeling the happiness of it. When you get excited about this stuff, take it further, you know, like how Cade was sharing what's happening with the technology and everything. It's the emotions that are attached to it that go on, not the physical matter. No, it is the emotions. It is the information. Okay, and so what's going on in your head? What are you talking about up here? You know, are you talking about good things? Are your stories up here fun things? You know, you have far, far more than you could ever possibly imagine, especially if you can't say truly. If I asked you, how are you? If you can't truly say to me, I am living my dream, then you have not come to the place of understanding who you was created, why you were created, and what you're here for. Because you are children of happiness. Everything that you'll ever read will bring you back to that. Remember it, live it, let it happen through everything you do. The challenges are simply things that are drawing your attention for the love and the act of love that you can give. So be very wealthy in it, give it. So I appreciate that, Steve. The pyramids are full of energy. Did you have one more thing you wanted to add?
Yeah, just really also what it reflected is, you know, there's the teachings of how it's more effective and how things are actually created are with your mind and not your body. And just knowing that, you know, Enki is sitting there creating beings without even being there just shows how he's not sitting there, you know, making them with his hands or using his physical body. It was completely mental and completely with his mind. So that helps me, you know, underline to myself the importance of thinking things through and using that as the focus rather than trying to just physically create or manifest something.
Yeah. I want to share on page 62 at the bottom what Toph is saying. Side by side then placed they other spaces, filled them with life and with light from above. Builded they then the halls of Amenti, that they might dwell eternally there, living with light to eternity's end. 32 were there of the children, sons of light, who had come among men, seeking to free from the bondage of darkness those who were bound by the force from beyond. Deep in the halls of life grew a flower, flaming, expanding, driving backward the night. Placed in the center a ray of great potence, life-giving, light-giving, filling with power all who came near it. Placed they around it thrones, 32, places for each of the children of light. Placed so they were bathed in the radiance, filled with the light from the eternal light. I would invite you to actually explore that in the way that our Russian medium has actually suggested that we do. I feel that at this point, you begin to relate to that. And what I like that it points out here is what my people being the indigenous roots of my beginnings, actually has shared with me that all these places, like the place of Galunlati, we call it the place of the light beings, it's all been a creation. It's all a holographic, if that's the word that may help you understand, is a place that we have created, that we as the gods of creation, we as creator have made. And this is the first reference that I feel actually matches a lot of the tablet interpretations that a lot of the indigenous people give. Okay, the halls of Amenti was created by the very beings that no longer wanted to actually go back through death and life cycles. Again, created. Understand then that we are the creators of the heaven, the hells, the bardos, the anything that we say that we believe in. And in your belief of that, you will surely experience it. So even in the halls of Amenti, this is a place that was created by the great intelligence that understood how you can make a field become whatever you put into it. Robbie, you want to take the next one?
Yes, something you just said reminded me of his, the statement in this section where he's talking about this, in the halls of life there grew a flower flaming, and then Billy Carson refers to it as the flower of life. Now that symbol, I really like that symbol a lot. I printed it on postcards and I have it around me in rooms. I use it for bookmarks. I really like that symbol. So I started looking into it, and what I learned is that Albert Einstein, who we all know, during his life, up until the day he died, he was searching for a unified theory, something that would be like the basic oneness of everything. He wanted a theory and proof for that. So after he died, a researcher by the name of Nassim Haramein picked it up.
Yeah.
And
who's still with us today,
yeah,
right?
he's still with us today, very definitely. And he came up with a theory called the holofractographic universe theory. And that is his unified theory. And at the base of that entire theory is the flower of life symbol. So the flower of life is actually, it's the two-dimensional, well, Billy even says that, representation of the 64-star tetrahedron. So I'm going to explain to you how the black hole works.
You go for it, girl.
According to Nassim Haramein, simplified version. So we have this event going on where there's this extremely fast spinning. I mean, black holes spin really fast. And I'll give you an example. There's a black hole behind our Milky Way, and that thing spins, it does 1,150 revolutions per second. So it's moving pretty quick.
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah, so the center of the hole looks like it's empty. The outside edge of the hole looks like there's stuff going on there. And they actually call that the event horizon. Yeah. So what's happening is there's so much centrifugal force going on here, so much speed, that what's in that so-called empty space in the blackness, it starts spinning all the particles out. And when it gets to the edge of it, that's what we call the event horizon, or the white hole, or the material world. We recognize it as matter. We experience it as matter. And at the same time, when all that stuff is going on, when that spinning out force gets to a certain spot, it kind of reaches the end of its potency and starts falling back in on itself. And that's where we have gravity. That pulling back in force is gravity. It starts all falling back into itself. And once it falls into itself, it reaches that point of emptiness, that vacuum, that nothingness. And the whole thing looks like a double torus if you were to look at it through a special set of energy spyglasses, which is kind of like two donuts sitting on top of each other.
Yeah.
One is spinning one way, spinning the stuff out, and the other one is spinning the opposite way. Stuff is falling back into the center. So we have these two rolling donuts working off each other like this perpetual motion machine. So Nassim Haramein was looking at this and saying, okay, there has to be something that is holding this all together. And what he found, what he finally came up with, was the 64-star tetrahedron. And that is, this geometric structure is composed of eight pointed star tetrahedrons. Now, half of them are pointing inward and half of them are pointing out. So the ones the points that are going out radiate energy outward, is that spinning out motion. And the points that are pointing inward are the ones that are drawing things in, collapsing it into the, where they meet is called ground zero or point zero. And that is the spot where, that's where Nassim comes up with, he says that's where the unified theory, or he believes it's more than a theory, So that's, at that point, we have the oneness, we have the emptiness, we have the void, we have the everythingness. So the reason that he says, and I have his points here in front of me, that the 64-star tetrahedron is the thing that works, is because there has to be a geometric structure that maintains equilibrium. In other words, no matter what pressure is coming from it, from any direction, it can equally disperse that, and it won't collapse. It'll just keep going. And at the same time, when the stuff reaches the innermost point, it has to have it in it to be able to turn it around and start sending it back out. So it does that with those, the outer pointing stars and the inner pointing stars. It also has to be practically divisible, meaning that it has to be able to divide into infinity. In other words, the same structure has to hold true for something as small as an atomic particle to something as big as Jupiter. And it does that. And he was so excited when he figured this out, that this 64-star tetrahedron totally fits the bill. So what it means is that the importance of this symbol, and why all of the ancients, we see it in ancient symbology, and we hear about it in the emerald tablets, is because it symbolizes creation itself. So my theory is that if we were to want to create something and we had that symbol and we had a word with it or an idea with it written down with it, and we use that as a way to focus, we could actually use that symbol to help us create what our desired outcome was. So that's my theory. And that's a theory of the black holes, according to Nassim Haramein.
Very good. And you were very enthusiastic with that. We all enjoyed that. So that's real cool. Joyce, did you get your stuff working?
I did. But what I'd like to share is on the bottom of page that just made me shiver when I read this. They are waiting for us to grow up. Mankind is still an infant. We have not even begun to crawl yet. A very good sign that we are ready will be when the 7.5 billion rise up together and remove the 100 elite families that are running the planet. So with everything we've said today about getting in touch with our own strengths and moving forward as human beings on this planet, we're going to do this a lot sooner. That we're going to stop crawling and we're going to start walking and running.
All right, you think so. All right, glad to hear that. Okay, we have anybody else's hands raised over there? Okay, I see Veronica.
Yes. First of all, I want to say how excited I am that all of us seem to have read The Emergence and saw the video. So that's like pretty impactful. And one of the things that I've used since then, and actually used since a week ago, is to definitely me in the future plan for me now. And in doing that by noon, finding myself, am I living to the plan that the future had for me? And my future was, what will I have accomplished by noon? What will I have accomplished by the end of my day? I don't think I've ever seriously took so serious that, and then seeing this in the Emergence video where she went on like, can we of the future 20 years from now affect who I am right now? And can me from 20 years ago affect who I am right now? And I realized this me thing that I'm talking about from 20 years ago, because I kind of had a problem with that. All the ancestors that I now represent are the me of 20 years ago. And their vision, their view, one day in this lineage, da 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 da. And here I am in this present moment, the living image of their projection of their future selves. I am that future self. I am present and in their future. And I'm creating the future of my future in my present. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay, see, you're part of the crazies. That's why you're in good company. We understand that. You might have a hard time going, see in and talk about it, but you're okay here. All right, we got that. Very good, thank you. Over my shoulder here, I see Deb Adler's having her arm up. What you got there, Deb?
I just wanted to share that one of the sites that I frequent in reference to the tetrahedron, there was a sighting, sites on YouTube. There was a sighting of an actual Merkaba over the city of New York this past week. And
Yep.
There was a very lengthy video taken of it, and the gentleman actually was able to do some slow-mo on it where you could see the points. It was pretty cool. That's what I wanted to share.
They're starting, many things are starting to appear that people are seeing in the sky. As a child, when at sunrise and sunset, I remember the old ones teaching us how to read the sky, because it was that the sky nation, meaning the universe, was sending us information, and it was written there in on the great space of the universe. And we would read, and now people are starting to see things like cloud formations. You know, some of the UFO people that I've come to know over the last 2-3 years are actually seeing how the motherships hide and cloak themselves in various unusual cloud formations, okay? And then not only that, but there's so much more activity starting where people are seeing very large flares of shooting stars or comets or whatever you're saying. So everything's out there. You want to go out at night and actually get in touch with the sky. It is gorgeous. Just shut everything off, go down and lay back on your chaise lounge and just talk to them, because there is response that comes with that, okay? Lots of response. Michael, you got your hand up. You trying to share something?
Okay, so my question is kind of more broad. As I've been reading this, I've been trying to figure out in my own mind who Thoth is. And I'm not quite sure whether Thoth is just a being who is technologically, culturally way advanced, or who is kind of, as we read through this, hearing him go through his own spiritual development, or is he someone who's already way spiritually developed and going through an even more spiritual development? I don't know, does that make any sense, that question? That kind of, I almost am trying to maybe find a parallel between what I'm going through and what he's going through, and I'm wondering if that's valid.
Exactly. Only what he's looking at and what we don't seem to look at is one of the particular, somebody who shared here today, is all time is right now. And the now is everything. The past or the future is right now, okay? And so when you say 36,000 years, and he's being given credit here for 3 incarnations, you and I exist beyond the body. We existed before the body, we'll exist after the body, okay? And so our learning process in the body is actually the learning process of how we work with matter and physical obstacles, the density, the most dense part of what we can experience as a being. And so when we drop the body, we go on with our learning. And when we pick up the body, we then are learning from the sense of the forgetfulness that we go through, or some people go through, and the other things that the body brings to us. so that everything you're experiencing in the body is part of that long trip. So with Thoth, you have to look at how many years each of the 3 incarnations actually are covering and how it assimilates and adds up to 36,000 years. Okay, you have not had to experience body. You've experienced everything in what would be considered the halls of a Amenti, which means you don't need body to learn. Everything that's out there, when you see the wind, the wind has voices. There's many, many voices on it that just aren't embodiments. When you go into the blackness that you've experienced, Michael, you expected the blackness would be empty, only to realize that your feeling and concept of it was full, right? Those are still, that's still you experiencing. So yes, I'm sure at this point, that's why I brought it up earlier, at least I think it was last week's program. You have a man here. You have a human man. He actually states in the tablets here, he was not of the great houses of the gods. He was no direct entity born of the gods. He was born with the after effects, or a DNA, a handed down DNA, which was called man, okay? And he's showing how it took him to do that. So each one of us in our role, the leadership that I call upon all the time and ask everybody to step up to it. When you begin to realize and accept that you have impact, that what you do changes things and actually can make things different, then you become that leader that you were born to be. And in that, nothing stops you, and there's nothing to be afraid of. In that moment, you're as strong as any theory, any reality of God could possibly be. It's when your heart is in the right place and you are that timeless being. This trivial amount of time you will experience in this body does not make you a beginning or an end. It's but a brief moment of dreaming. And yes, you're all that and then some. And everything you're going through has great importance. Do not treat your life as trivial. Everything that's brought to your attention is major. It's what are you doing with it? How are you working through it? What of it can you make a story that actually fits into the greatness of why you even came back through the body? It's up to you. How do you want to do that? So yes, he worked his way through same things you're doing on a day-to-day basis, maybe in a different setting because of where you're at in the world of time right now, but definitely on a day-to-day, hour by hour. And the tablets reiterate that up and down. Even if it isn't here in everything, it's in every tablet I've read. It unfolds a breath at a time. It doesn't even speak of a day. It says a breath at a time, that there are eons in every breath we take. Well, how often are you breathing? You know, how much do you pay attention to the breath? And when you're paying attention to it, where does it take you? Okay, so you are multiple things happening in any one breath. So yeah, very important sitting up there in Montreal you are. Okay, Mary, you have something you're patiently waiting to share?
Yeah, actually, a book that I really love, a scientist I really love is Michio Kaku. So as I've been, reading this section and listening to Maya and listening to Mike, I had very similar, I remembered a lot of what Michio Kaku talked about. He talked about the different programs that scientists, actually was pretty conservative about it, are using for sharing consciousness, for telekinesis, all kinds of different things. The important thing is that he talked about one day we, through laser technology, would be able to reach the stars. And I started thinking about, well, laser technology, we're talking about refraction of light. We're talking about holography. And then when I think about, like Mike, how you brought up the whole concept of time, there is no time. You can touch on time at now, at any time. And then as Nassim talks about the oscillating protons, where we each share that oscillation. So as we experience, we know each other experiences. So through this technology, or understanding the fractal of light, our bodies are already made incredible. Our consciousness just has to develop to the point where we can reach the stars and we don't have to worry about cyber technology.
All right, very good. Thank you. Also, we have here very quickly, we're running out of time. I see that Trina, you had something you wanted to add?
I did. There you go. I'm unmuted. Mine's really quick. There's just a little phrase in here that says, that means he's spent a total of 10,000 years in regeneration of his physical avatars. And we talked about the avatars, and it's so different. I've just been sitting here. It's so different to sit and look at my physical body as my avatar, that I'm sitting with my little joysticks or whatever I want to use. And, you know, I am telling this physical body what to do. And the true me is not the physical body. The physical body is just my avatar right now. So that's all I wanted to say.
Well, it's a very valid point that I'm hoping all of you start really taking very serious, because you are weighted down by what you think this is out here. And it's not out there. What's weighting you down is in here. And what you're not doing with what you have been given in here. Your DNA is loaded with greatness. Your DNA does things that you do not believe is physically possible. That's in your DNA. And the more you go beyond what you are limiting yourself to, the more you push yourself past a fear, the more you confront your fears and actually take on whatever it is that you're thinking you can't do. Every time you do that, you're actually absorbing enormous amounts of time. And so meeting yourself on the path, meeting who you are and where you want to go right now. You know, what is it you want to do while you're in this world? Because you know what? The minute you determine what that is, the world begins to accommodate it. So when we are busy blaming other people, blaming what the government's not doing, blaming everything that's happening, and looking outside and making that, you're feeding that. You're feeding that. You know, make sure that you see some good to outcome some kind of controversial situation. What is the good that could come out of that controversy? What is the good that could come out of that opposite of love? Okay, what part of the beautiful night would you give up? I love my nights, but neither would I sacrifice my daytime. So what do we live in? We live in the world of those dualities, the night and the day. Each of them very purposefully a part of us. And when you start looking at what you're drawing and attracting, understand this, not easy to live with, but when you realize you are attracting all the confusion, you're attracting all of the challenges, you're attracting what you're considering the disasters and the crises. We have sat complacent for a very long time. It was very easy for somebody to walk into the field of consciousness and drop something called COVID-19 and scare the hell out of humanity, not just in one location, but everywhere. And then we began to facilitate it, didn't we? We began to create the reality of it. It's only as real as those who have participated in it. See, we don't want to accept that. We still want to be victim. We still want to say something out there isn't doing it the right way. Well, what's right about you? What's right about how you would do it? You know, when we join together, there's so much that we can change. When there's what I constantly go on Facebook, and those of you who are on my Facebook, I'm sure you're tired of hearing me say that. But every time I hear people complaining about something, it's like, shut your mouth, get off of Facebook, get on the computer, write a letter and send it to them. Let them know what you think. Because when they get enough of that and they see that people are not just sitting complacent, those elected officials do change. I've done it many, many times. Recently done it with the Attorney General of the United States. Okay, you need to know that you have impact. When you begin to act with that, you'll see so much love in yourself. You will want nothing to suffer. You will, even if you could say, I dislike that person more than anything on the earth, you would still never wish them bad or harm. It's us. It's us evolving to that understanding. And it's a track that we can make. It's in our DNA. How much are you really working toward it? And with that note, they're telling me our time is up and we're going to have to check off. I really, really appreciate every one of you this week. We've had some exciting discussions, right? So everybody give yourself a pat on the back here. We did great. And I learned a lot in the sharing that we're doing. I see we have some new faces. I see Kay. Kay, I don't know where you're from, but hello. There's Kay. I see Gary. You're sitting up there pious as ever. Okay. I don't see any other faces that I have. There's Tom's. Tom, it's good to see you're on. Tom Stevens. Yep. And I see Stephanie. I see you. Welcome. Welcome. Beautiful picture. All right. I appreciate all of you. I see Margaret. Margaret, you're sitting up there in Cleveland. I hope the weather's getting nicer. It's good to see you all. Eileen, everybody, take a wonderful breath and have a beautiful week. And know that every bit of what you do is rewarding. So go for it. Love you. Have a good week. OCO.